The fluorescent lights of Romano's Italian kitchen cast harsh shadows across Maria's weathered hands as she counted the crumpled bills one more time. $3.47. Her daughter Sophia hadn't eaten since yesterday morning, and the fever that had kept her home from school was getting worse. Maria's own stomach had been empty for 2 days, but that didn't matter. Nothing mattered except the pale, trembling child waiting in their car outside, wrapped in the only warm blanket they owned. Maria had walked past this restaurant 100 times on her way to her 2 cleaning jobs, always averting her eyes from the families inside, laughing over plates of steaming pasta and golden garlic bread. She'd never imagined she'd be standing here, holding $3 that weren't even enough for a side salad, about to beg for food for her sick child. But desperation has a way of erasing pride, and love has a way of making the impossible seem necessary. The lunch rush had just ended, and the restaurant hummed with that peculiar afternoon quiet, dishes clattering in the back while a few lingering customers finished their meals. Maria approached the host stand where a young man with slicked back, hair and a nameplate reading Marcus Manager stood reviewing receipts. He looked up, his eyes sweeping over her threadbare coat and worn shoes, with barely concealed disdain. "We're not hiring," he said flatly before she could speak. "No, sir, I'm not. I need to buy some food. My daughter, she's sick, and I have $3. Maria's voice cracked despite her determination to stay strong. "I was hoping maybe I could get some plain pasta or bread, anything warm. She hasn't eaten and—" "Lady, this isn't a charity kitchen," Marcus interrupted, his voice dripping with contempt. "Our cheapest appetizer is $7. You can't even afford to sit in here." He glanced toward the dining room as if her presence might offend the remaining customers. Maria felt her cheeks burn. "Please, I can work for it. I can clean, I can wash dishes. I just need something for my daughter. She's only 7 years old and she's—" "Do I look like I run a soup kitchen?" Marcus's voice rose, drawing attention from nearby tables. "We have standards here. I can't have people like you coming in thinking they can beg for handouts. It's bad for business. Now, if you can't afford to eat here, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." What Maria didn't know was that in the corner booth, partially obscured by a decorative plant, sat David Romano, the 62-year-old CEO of the restaurant chain that bore his family name. He'd built his empire from a single pizzeria. His immigrant parents had opened 40 years ago, and he made it a practice to visit his locations unannounced, watching how his staff treated customers when they thought no one important was looking. Today, dressed in simple jeans and an old sweater, he'd been observing the lunch service while reviewing expansion plans on his tablet. But now the tablet sat forgotten as he watched the scene unfold. Maria's shoulders sagged, but she tried one more time. "Sir, please. I'm not asking for charity. I'll pay what I have, and I promise I'll come back with the rest. I just need—" "Security," Marcus barked, though the restaurant had no security guard. "I want this woman removed from the premises. And honestly, lady, if you can't feed your kid, maybe you should call child services. Sounds like neglect to me." The cruelty of those words hung in the air like poison. Maria's face drained of color and her hands began to shake, not just from hunger or exhaustion, but from the deep, primal fear every struggling parent knows, the fear that someone will decide you're not good enough, that they'll take away the only thing that matters. "My daughter is not neglected," Maria whispered, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. "She is loved. She is everything. I work 16 hours a day to keep a roof over her head. I just lost my apartment, and we're living in my car until I can save enough for a deposit, and she got sick. And I—" Her voice dissolved into sobs she could no longer control. David Romano stood up. The movement was quiet, but something in the deliberate way he rose made Marcus finally notice him. The manager's face went through a rapid transformation. Confusion, recognition, and then pure terror. "Mr. Romano, I didn't know you were here, sir. I was just—" David held up one hand, silencing him. He walked slowly toward Maria, his expression unreadable. When he reached her, he did something no one expected. He pulled out a chair from the nearest table and gently guided her into it. "Ma'am, please sit down," he said softly. "When was the last time you ate?" Maria looked up at him, confused and frightened, unsure what was happening. Who are you?" "My name is David Romano. My family owns this restaurant, and I'd like to hear about your daughter." Within minutes, David had a server bring out a feast: chicken parmesan, pasta carbonara, fresh salad, warm bread, and minestrone soup. "Pack half of this to go," he instructed. "In our best containers." Then he turned to Maria. "Please eat. And tell me about Sophia," as Maria tentatively began to eat, trying not to devour the food too quickly. Despite her desperate hunger, the story spilled out between bites. How her husband had died in a construction accident 2 years ago. How the medical bills had bankrupted them. How she'd been working as a cleaner but couldn't afford childcare. So she brought Sophia to some jobs. How they'd been evicted last month when the rent increased. How she'd been saving every penny for a new apartment. And they were so close, just 2 more weeks of paychecks away. David listened, really listened. The way his own mother had taught him to listen when people spoke. When Maria finished, he made a phone call. Then another. And another. "Marcus," he said finally, turning to the manager who stood frozen nearby. "You're fired!" Effective immediately. "Please collect your belongings and leave. HR will contact you about your final paycheck." "Mr. Romano, please, I'm sorry, I didn't mean—" "You humiliated a mother trying to feed her sick child. You threatened to call child services not out of genuine concern, but out of cruelty. That's not who we are. That's not who I will employ. Leave now." As Marcus hurried away in disgrace, David turned back to Maria. "I've made some arrangements. First, there's a motel 2 blocks from here. I've booked you a room for the next month, paid in full. It's clean, safe, and they'll hold it for you as long as you need while you look for an apartment. Second, my assistant is emailing you information about 3 apartments near here with landlords who work, with people rebuilding their lives. No credit checks, reasonable deposits that can be paid in installments." Maria's hands flew to her mouth. "I can't. That's too much. I can't accept." "Third," David continued, his voice gentle but firm, "we have several locations that need evening cleaning staff. The pay is $22 an hour, and the shift is 6 to 10, 4 nights a week. If you're interested, the job is yours. We also offer child care reimbursement and health insurance after 90 days. The restaurant had gone completely silent. Other diners watched with tears in their eyes. The servers stood motionless, witnessing something they'd never forget. "But why?" Maria whispered. "You don't know me." "I'm nobody." David's eyes grew distant for a moment, traveling back through decades. "When I was 7 years old, my mother stood in a grocery store counting pennies, trying to buy milk and bread. The cashier told her she was holding up the line, that she should leave if she couldn't afford it. A stranger behind her paid for our groceries that day. My mother never forgot that kindness. She told me that when you have the power to help, you have the responsibility to help. You're not nobody. Maria, you're a mother who loves her daughter enough to swallow her pride and ask for help. That takes more courage than most people will ever understand." He reached into his wallet and pulled out several bills. "This is for medicine, diapers, whatever Sophia needs. It's not a loan. It's a gift from one human being to another. And this," he handed her a business card, "has my assistant's number. Call tomorrow about the job. Or don't, no pressure. But the offer stands." Maria clutched the card and the money, her whole body shaking with sobs now, not of despair, but of overwhelming relief and gratitude. "Thank you," she managed. "Thank you. I'll work hard. I promise I'll work so hard. I'll never forget this." "I know you will," David smiled. "Now take this food to Sophia. She's waiting for her mom." As Maria left, carrying bags of food and a container of hot soup, David returned to his booth. The other customers broke into spontaneous applause. One woman approached him, tears streaming down her face. "That was beautiful," she said. "The world needs more people like you." David shook his head gently. "The world needs more people willing to see each other. Really see each other. We pass by 1,000 stories every day and never stop to ask what they are." Maria didn't need a hero. She just needed someone to treat her like a human being with dignity and worth. 6 months later, Maria had her own apartment. Sophia was healthy, thriving in school, and had gained back the weight she'd lost. Maria had been promoted to cleaning supervisor, managing teams across 3 locations. She'd even started taking online classes toward a business degree. And every Sunday, she brought Sophia to Romano's Italian kitchen. They sat at the same table where David had first offered them kindness, and they shared a meal together, a mother, and daughter who had survived the darkness and found their way back to light. Sometimes David joined them, bringing his own grandchildren. The kids would play together while the adults talked about life, dreams and second chances. On the wall near their usual table, David had hung a small plaque with a quote from his mother. "We rise by lifting others." Because in the end, that's what kindness is, not grand gestures or charity for the cameras, but the simple choice to see someone's humanity when they're at their lowest, to offer a hand up instead of turning away, to remember that everyone we meet is fighting a battle we know nothing about. And sometimes, all someone needs is food for their daughter and someone willing to believe they deserve help.